Today, I am so excited to introduce our speaker, Mary Elizabeth Castle. She is joining us from Texas. She's the Director of Government Relations at Texas Values, and she was a very instrumental part of getting the Texas law passed, both the first round for women and girls sports in the state of Texas, K through 12, and then the expansion that expanded into college. So Texas Values recently had a press release come out discussing the implementation of the law and how they were going to try to have some real teeth in the state of Texas and make sure that it was doing the job it was intended to do. And I was fascinated by the press release and asked Mary Elizabeth if she would join us to talk about the actual implementation of these laws that are going in around the country and what effect we can expect them to have, and how people, we realize that laws are only as effective as them being put into practice. And so Mary Elizabeth was going to expand on that. So Mary Elizabeth, if you want to unmute and join us, it's good to see you, and I will let you take it away. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much, Kim and Marshy, for having me. It's been such a pleasure working with you and everyone in Icons. You've been such a big help to us in Texas with having just the numbers here, especially with the NCAA protests back in January in San Antonio. So always appreciative of what you do, and thanks for allowing me to share this evening. As Kim said, my name is Mary Elizabeth Castle. I'm Director of Government Relations for Texas Values. We're an organization in Texas that handles public policy and legal issues, mostly related to religious freedom, pro-life issues, and family issues. But we have had an interest in this issue of protecting female athletes at all levels, from the time they're very young in grade school up until they're women in college, and so much can be threatened as far as their scholarship and safety and other issues. And we wanted to make sure that we had legislation in our state that protected women and their opportunity to compete in sports and enjoy the thrill of victory. So our journey began back in 2021 when we first advocated for a full package bill. And a lot of people don't realize this, but the bill we passed at the end of 2021 was a Save Girls Sports law that protected female athletes in K through 12, what we call UIL sports in Texas, which is University Interscholastic League sports. But the goal from the beginning has always been to pass a bill that would protect women at all competitive levels. The very first session, just to give you some context and background, was a hard fight. We were standing for this issue. We had a few other groups along with us, Concerned Women for America. We had a few other female athletes in our state that were speaking out in 2021. But there was a lot of work to be done in getting our legislators to really be passionate about the issue. Yeah, that's right. UIL is high school. Yeah, that's correct. They're the governing board in Texas that handles all of the sports for schools. So yeah, it was really a uphill battle trying to make sure that our legislators were passionate about the issue. It took us 3 special sessions in order to get that first law to protect girls' sports at the middle school and high school level. But after that, we knew that the work had to be done in order to get our state really moving and passionate about the issue, and working on leadership in our Texas House as well, making sure that our Speaker of the House was on board. Our governor has always been on board for this issue, and our lieutenant governor. It was just getting that third higher office, the Speaker of the House, to be our champion and to really lobby and advocate for him to make sure that a law protecting women on all levels could get passed. So that's when we came back in 2023. We spent those 2 years really strategizing, strengthening our relationships, making sure that female athletes were confident in speaking out at the Texas Capitol. Some of the things we do in helping with that is, helping people prepare testimony, talking to legislators before they even come back for the legislative session, and making sure we can develop relationships like with people like icons, IWF, and so many others that we work with to make sure we have a huge coalition. And I think that's what was the key to getting the Save Women's Sports bill for college this session, is just having so many women come to the Texas Capitol, rally behind this issue, and testify and share their story. And I can't go without saying that Riley Gaines was phenomenal and instrumental in making sure that there was a lot of attention in our state around this issue. Her testimony, her presence, her meetings with our Texas governor, Greg Abbott, were really key in making sure that we could get this bill to the finish line in Texas. Not to mention the NCAA and their kind of neutral but not necessarily positive stance helped as well. So we're very happy that we were able to pass this law this session, which icons played a big role in that, and so many female athletes who came forward. And just to talk a little bit about how we played a role. So from the very beginning, we were the organization that said, okay, we want to choose a particular elected official to carry this bill. So we chose Representative Valerie Swanson to champion this issue. She had carried the bill and was the author of the bill in 2021 for Save Girls Sports. And she was also the House sponsor of the Save Women's Sports bill. The Save Women's Sports bill is a Senate bill, Senate Bill 15. So the original author was Senator Mays Middleton. But our team was instrumental as well in choosing him in the Senate and working closely with him. We provided these legislators research, talking points. We gave our feedback on what the law should look like as far as language. Now, legislators do have their own authority and power to write the law as they please, but we have a good enough relationship with these legislators to where they can listen to our feedback and say, okay, this is what the law needs to say in order to make sure we have the best protections and to make sure that it's upheld in law. And I'm very happy to tell all of you that neither the Save Girls Sports law or the Save Women's Sports law that just passed a few months ago and was signed into law back in June, neither of them have faced lawsuits in our state. Neither of them have been enjoined, and we're very happy about that. I don't know quite what the strategy is going forward. We thought when we passed this college bill that maybe the opposition, ACLU, would file lawsuits. I don't want to give them an idea to do that, but we're very happy that that has not happened in our state, and both laws have been able to be implemented. I'm also happy to announce that back in, I believe, June, it was early this summer, I went to a UIL meeting, and for some strange reason, a member of the Texas public wanted to propose that boys play on girls' volleyball teams. And, this was a very strange proposal. I'm not sure if this guy was really an LGBTQ activist or a transgender activist, or if he really wanted men's competing on women's sports teams. I just don't really know where he was coming from. But whenever this was presented before the UIL, the commissioner, called me. He said, you have to know that we're going to stick to the Save Girls Sports law. We've been making people accountable for that law for the past 2 years. I'm making sure it's being enforced at all the levels. And so for I would say maybe the first time, but they don't do it a lot. They just decided to reject this public proposal by this individual to have boys on girls volleyball team because they said it just clearly is not aligned with the Save Girls Sports law. So there was some confidence in that law is being enforced, with confidence, and we have confidence in the UIL commissioner, Jamie Harrison, to carry that out. Well, the next step, I believe, is, making sure that our Save Women's Sports law at the college level is enforced as well. And that's why our organization wrote a letter. And that's what Kim and Marcy want me to talk mostly about, is our letter to colleges and universities about the Save Women's Sports law, SB 15. So I do want to talk a little bit about SB 15 itself and one thing that I did is, and this is something you can do as well, you can go to Texas Legislature online. You can type in SB 15 to look up the bill. And one thing that's helpful is looking up the bill analysis. And I'm just going to go through a few things in that bill analysis so you can have an understanding of what this bill actually says. It defines athletic competition and institution of higher education. It's very clear that it prohibits an inter-college athletic team sponsored or authorized by an institution of higher education, except as provided by subsection C, from allowing a student to compete on the team in an intercollegiate athletic competition sponsored or authorized by the institution that is designated for the biological sex opposite to the student's biological sex. And then, of course, it says gives an explanation of mixed sex intercollegiate athletic competitions. SB 20 or SB 15, our Save Women's Sports Law, determines biological sex by the official birth certificate, which is similar to our Save Girls Sports Law. And also, I think what is special about the Save Women's Sports Law, and I believe these provisions will apply retroactively to the Save Girls Sports Law as well, is that, it prohibits retaliation against a person for reporting a male competing in female sports. And I think that's very important, that, women athletes can have the right to speak out and not feel like they'll get kicked off the team or they'll lose their scholarship or be retaliated against in any way. And then it also authorizes a person to bring a civil action for injunctive relief against an institution of higher education or an intercollegiate athletic team described by this law. Now, part of the enforcement for this bill will be that the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board will have to adopt rules to implement this law. That's next on my list to make sure that they get a copy of my letter and that there's some other separate communication to hold them accountable to create those laws. But back to the letter, the first institution that we want to make sure is following this law and implementing this law are the public universities and colleges in the state of Texas. And so that's why my organization sent a letter to 140 public university and Texas colleges to let them know about SB 15, to explain, what's going on with these rumors about changes to Title IX, which we all know are bogus and they haven't been finalized, to make them know they don't have to be fearful of the NCAA, and just making them aware that they, have an obligation to honor Title IX for its original intent and purpose. So the things we touched on in the law, of course, were, an explanation of what the law says, kind of like what I just read to you, but with a little more detail. We even go into more detail about what has happened in Texas. I think even when drafting this letter, I, had a colleague kind of look over it, and there were some things that jogged my memory about CC Tefler, who competed in the NCAA outdoor track and field competition several years ago. Most people don't know about the male cheerleader at Kilgore College who actually physically threatened a young lady in a locker room. And then, of course, we're infamous in Texas now because Will Thomas, is actually from Austin, Texas. So we remind them of why we need it in the state of Texas, and they can simply look on the news and see every day how this is happening across the country. So we remind them of all of those details. And then, of course, we positively affirm the law and say, like, the goal of the law is to protect women athletes from losing sports opportunities and being forced to compete against men. And so we go into the details of the law. We explain that a woman will have a right to legal action and she can't be retaliated against. And I think that's very important that colleges and universities know that up front, because they can save themselves a lot of heartache from, trying to face another legal challenge if they're then trying to retaliate against a young woman for speaking out. We also explain how it's aligned with Title IX. We discussed the history of Title IX and that, Congress has not changed Title IX. There's been no congressional action to change Title IX. So, whatever hear from the Biden administration or the Department of Ed about these things, you just need to be aware that Title IX is very clear about protecting women's rights as far as athletic competitions, even scholarships, separate, facilities for using the restroom and showering and all of these things. And we mentioned these things as well. Then of course, there's just like the very simple argument that I think all of us know just from history class that, this is a state law, it's law. So any state law, just by the nature of our constitution and the way things work in our country, will take precedence over any federal department rule. So, just a quick reminder, agencies can't really make law. They're not supposed to. That's not constitutional. So they can just make rules for all intents and purposes. So, our state law will still take precedence over that. But also adding to the fuel, I guess to say, is that any rumor you're hearing about the redefinition of sex in Title IX, those things are still being figured out, I will say, by the Biden administration. We know that that rule might not go into place until October. We're also hearing a rumor that the Department of Ed didn't turn their paperwork in on time for it to go into place in October. So the earliest might be 2024. So they should not, hang their hat, so to speak, on we have to have sex be defined as gender identity when it's not even a rule yet. It's just a rumor that the department wants to do this. So it should just be clearly ignored. And then we also kind of end the letter with talking about the NCAA, talking about how they've kind of taken a neutralized or back off approach where they went to the sport by sport approach. And, even though this creates a lot of problems, I think one thing that the colleges were afraid of, as far as helping us at the Capitol, or legislators were afraid of back in 2021, was the NCAA statement where they said they wouldn't come to Texas if we were to pass such law. And so we make it very clear that they've backtracked on that, and that's no longer the case. And this is the page 6, where I mention icons and mention the great work that y'all did in organizing that protest at the Henry B. Gonzalez Convention. And I mentioned how you're currently, suing the NCAA or threatening to sue the NCAA. And, this is just further proof, like, don't use that as an excuse to why you can't implement the Save Women's Sports Law. And then we also end with something very interesting. It's definitely legal creativity, but I did find that the Southeastern Conference has a policy for referees and officials where referees and officials have to have sex separated locker rooms. And I just thought that was really interesting. And so they don't talk too much about sports, sex separated sports, which is a good thing, because I'm glad they don't have a policy that would allow for men to compete in women's sports. But they do have a policy about sex separated, changing facilities for referees. And it's like, okay, well, you already kind of are on the right path of kind of affirming these Title IX regulations. So the SEC seems to be very clear on the right path to where it's like, okay, well, the SEC is kind of where we're seeing a lot of our Texas colleges head. They're going to be a great power player, maybe even overcoming the NCAA as far as their influence in Texas. And so it's important just to know that's kind of where they are, which, it's just creative, I would say, advocacy to say, like, this is an example of someone who's right on this issue in one aspect. doesn't directly speak to sports, but I think, they can look at that and interpret it how they want to and say, well, hey, it looks like SEC doesn't, believe in gender identity for violation of spaces. So, no reason to think that they wouldn't want us to follow the law to save women's sports. So as I said, this letter went out to 140 Texas public colleges and universities. It was all emailed to them. I will say, and I forgot to mention this in the timeline, but last summer, before our legislative session, my team and I actually met with the University of Texas President Jay Hartzell. And we were able to bring along, and actually she was able to lead a lot of the meeting. Some of you might be friends with her, actually. Katie Aris Wilson, who is a champion swimmer. I believe she's in the Hall of Fame at the University of Texas. She contributes a lot to the school, and she wrote a letter the summer after Leah Thomas competed, which was the same summer. And so we wanted her to share about her letter and the other 40 alumni who were on the letter with the president at the University of Texas, Austin. So whenever we sent our letter to all the colleges and universities this year, about a week ago, it was received positively. And I think, we're seeing more and more, confidence in that this is the right thing. And I'm really hoping we are seeing confidence that this is the right thing. I think I got one response from one college, I can't remember, and it might have just been a junior college, but they told me that, say, take me off your email list. So that was one example of someone who maybe didn't appreciate the letter, but other than that, haven't really received many responses. But I think this issue is starting to be received a lot better. And then I think people respect our governor's position on this as well. Our governor, he held a traditional signing ceremony right after the session in June. But working with his office, his comms director said, I just want to plan something bigger. And so that's when you probably saw there was an event in Denton, Texas. Our governor had a second ceremony for the Save Women's Sports Law. That was at the Texas Women's Hall of Fame in Denton, Texas. Just making sure that we can invite more and more female college athletes, which was great. We had athletes from Tarleton State, Midwestern State University, and we, of course, had Riley Gaines and Paula Scanlon. But it was just a great showing. So very appreciative of the support of that issue. So it's been getting a lot of positive attention. I won't belabor too long, but I just wanted to say a few things that, if you want to get involved or help, we definitely appreciate you sharing the letter. To find that letter, you can go to SaveWomenSportsTexas.com. And if you go down to the bottom where you find our press releases, you can find the press release. And within that, you can find a link to the letter. And then, of course, always let us know at Texas Values if you hear of violations of the law. So that helps a lot because we want to make sure it's implemented properly and people are being held accountable for following the law. And you can always, send that email to me. And my email is pretty simple. It's mcastle@txvalues.org. So if you hear anything or as something's happening to you and you're at a Texas university or even at the lower level, because even though I think Dr. Harrison is, holding schools accountable, I want to make sure that continues. Just always let us know so we can hold people accountable and make sure the law is being implemented properly. But thank you so much for having me on. That's kind of in a nutshell our role in trying to protect women's sports in Texas. Again, please visit the website. So thank you so much, and really looking forward to continuing to work with you on this issue.
Thank you so much.